By now, we've all heard of the power of using ginseng, an herb that can help build immunity, regulate blood sugar, and improve focus as part of its benefits. It's called an adaptogen and is part of a family of other herbs used for their naturally medicinal purposes. Well, joining us with more on these power herbs is Dr. J.P. Salevi, Medical Director at Carolina Holistic Medicine. It's good to have you.
It's good to be here.
I'm so glad that we're talking about this because I've always kind of grown up with the idea that if you can find a solution holistically, you're better off in the long run.
Right, less collateral damage than if you use a synthetic pharmaceutical. But I'm a traditional medical doctor trained to do it both ways. But I got involved in the late 90s in an alternative way of doing things. And in 2006, I wrote a book on 3 adaptogens. And so I'll define that if you want.
Yeah, please, I'd love to hear.
Yeah. So there are 300 to 400 medicinal herbs used in Asia and in the world. And of those, only about 24 or 25 are designated as adaptogens because they help you adapt to stress. That's where it came from.
That's what I was going to ask is what does the word adaptogen mean?
Yeah, it was coined by Dr. Nikolai Lazarev. He was a Russian scientist back during the Cold War era. They were looking for things to help their cosmonaut program and their athletes compete against the West. And since the Iron Curtain dropped, all that Russian language, Ukrainian language stuff has been translated. So we were a little bit late in the game on those, but there must be 3 criteria that are met to be classified an adaptogen. 1, they cannot be toxic. So you could turn up a whole bottle of the stuff, take every last pill in a bottle, and it will not hurt you or kill you.
Okay.
That's 1 criteria. Number 2, it has to work by different mechanisms of actions. So not just do one thing, it has to do multiple things on your body and your hormone axis.
Which, like what I mentioned with the ginseng,
right.
It does have various effects on your health in a positive way.
In a positive way. And then thirdly, and this is the oddest I find, is that it has to equalize. So let's take ginseng, for example. If you're using that herb to help reduce somebody's blood sugar, because they're type 2 diabetic, it can bring their blood sugar down. But you take the same dose of the same herb and with someone who has low blood sugar, it'll bring it up.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, and that's the key thing right there. That is, to me, the most amazing thing. And there's no pharmaceutical that'll ever do that. You take blood pressure medicines, for example, it just goes down. You'll never bring it back up. So adaptogen herbs are used heavily in Chinese, traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine. And we've probably on the books now have about 25 that we know of.
Let's talk about COVID because people are still getting COVID. They're also experiencing long COVID, meaning you have those extended periods of time where you're still feeling symptoms and you're still dragged down by the initial infection. So how do you use adaptogens in treatment of COVID?
Well, there's different stages. So let's take the acute phase. So in the acute phase of COVID, you've been infected, you test positive, and you can use adaptogen herbs. One in particular is effective called Andrographis penialecus. And it is actually on the nation of Thailand's official list of herbals to use to treat acute COVID.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So they've made this declaration?
They've made that declaration a couple years ago. So when their citizens get COVID, they go and run and they get some Andrographis, which is available over the counter.
Yeah. What is the data on them recovering from by use of this?
So yeah, there are some small studies. I use it in my practice because I believe it helps. I take it routinely for prevention and also for early treatment and for long haulers. So long haulers can pop up 8 months after the infection. It's not just necessarily a continuation of the acute phase. You may have a bit of a reprieve, 2 or 3 months, and then it pops up again. Andrographis is in part of my protocol. I work with an alliance of other frontline doctors called the FLCCC. Matter of fact, several of them are in town today for a dinner. And they came up with a protocol, and I actually helped them with a post-vaccine injury protocol. So they have different protocols.
Interesting. So if someone is experiencing COVID, long COVID, whatever the case may be, they come to see you, and then you would then prescribe these natural herbs.
Right.
They would take them, and then how soon after would you say that they start to see an improvement?
Well, it's variable. So you know, we have people that have turned around. Now, it's not just Andrographis. It's another slew of supplements, or what we call nutraceuticals, things from zinc to quercetin to vitamin C and vitamin D, along with some pharmaceuticals that are prescribed. Depends on the patient, what their needs are. We see turnaround times in 2 days.
Goodness.
So people back on their feet in 2 days. We've kept people out of the hospital. That's our chief goal.
That's number one.
Yeah, keeping them out of the hospital is important. So early treatment, and then what we're seeing a lot now is the long haulers.
Yeah. And so for people who are watching this who want more information, where do they find you?
CarolinaHolisticMedicine.com.
Okay.
Or Salibi.net.
Dr. Salibi, this has been so fascinating. I can't wait to talk to you more about more things.
Sure.
I mean, this is just barely scratching the surface. So
Sure.
thank you so much for coming in.
Sure,
I appreciate
glad
it.
to be here.
We're back after this.